All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get started. As you see on the screen, my name is Rick Geha. Let me give you a little bit of my own background. And I'm a real estate agent. First and foremost, real estate agent, and have been for 40 years selling houses. In my career, believe me, I don't think that people are in business for long unless they've made several mistakes and had to learn from them. And I've done that. I started coaching and speaking just a little less than 30 years ago because I had such a passion at that time for helping my fellow real estate agents. I'd only been in the business 10 years and can remember going to our local marketing meeting. I'm from the Bay Area in Northern California, the San Francisco area. And go to local marketing meetings and meet up with people that seemed newer, seemed lost, and really wanted to help them out. So as I look back at my real estate career, one thing that resonates is that I was in college getting a biology degree, and I wanted to go to dental school. And after getting rejected by 13 dental schools, I fell back, if you will, into real estate in May of 1980. And it's been a wonderful and rewarding career. And through my career in real estate, I found speaking and coaching and training, which has also been amazing for me. In 1993, 13 years after I got started in the business, I was hired, if you will, to manage someone else's office that had 12 agents. And that was a very company in Northern California. That company had 21 offices in 21 cities. And the office they asked me to manage in Fremont, California, which is where I'm from. And right now I can think that our claim to fame for Fremont, California is it's the city where all of the Teslas are built. And so I took over an office that had 12 agents and that was struggling. And I had 6 bosses. And two of the bosses, I should say in particular, who have gone on to do amazing things in the real estate industry were my mentors and my guides in learning how to be a great recruiter and retainer. Now, one of the things that I think is vital about a seminar or webinar called Recruiting and Retention on Steroids is that you have to understand that the learning, recruiting, and being the best recruiter has a lot, and every recruiter in a session. The understanding around this. For instance, I am a coach with Workman Success Systems. And one of the things that I have as a coach with Workman Success Systems is I mostly coach people who own real estate offices and run a team. Now, have I ever coached people who just own a real estate office and don't run a team? And the reason is because I have such a passion and an understanding of recruiting at a high level. So the office that I had with 12 agents, eventually that corporation, that whole company was sold to Cendant at the time, which is Realogy today, and we became a very large Century 21 corporate-owned franchise. And I was able to build my office from 12 agents to the time I left the company, we had 125 agents. And over that period of time, I learned, of course, a lot about understanding at a high level and understanding retention at a high level. Now, I don't have time to go through all the stories that I normally do when I do a 4-hour recruiting presentation, but it is very important to understand that a lot of what happens with recruiting is a result of you or mindset, what you are doing, and how you are. So we're going to go over several of those things. A company, I went to a very large franchising brand, and I'm owning 9 Keller Williams Realty offices over a very long period of time. Marilyn is saying that my connection. Marilyn, how do I sound now?
Can you say something else for me, Rick?
How do I sound now?
That sounds much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. While those 7, 8, 9 was over a very long period of time of working hard, people. Now, I left that organization to pursue more speech coaching 5 years ago, and side, which is people
I'm sorry, Rick,
now,
it's dropping again. We're not able to understand what you're saying there. I apologize for interrupting, but for purposes of trying to be helpful.
No worries. Okay, how's this? Is that better?
It seems better. It seems like it just likes me to talk to you and then it's happy.
Okay. Well, I like you to talk to me too, and I want to make sure that, yeah, because you're hearing the experience from the other end, so.
Yeah, and that seems to be a lot better.
So we'll keep going. Okay, great. So we'll keep going now, and so I learned obviously a lot of lessons after doing all of that, and what I really mostly learned is how important it was for me, my opinion of myself, my opinion of my surroundings. One of my greatest mentors of all time used to say that if people don't like you and don't want to be around you, you're not going to be able to recruit effectively. So you have to start by working on you. That's a huge thing. So even now when I coach large teams, and teams also need to recruit to the team just as brokerages work with large teams and help them understand recruiting at a high level, we start with something called core values. And as we start to understand core values, we better at understanding who we want to attract. In other words, attract into our business what we who we currently are. So working on going to be your way. Now, pass the slide up right here that talks about the number one retention is the number one recruiting tool. And we talked about, I want to sound salesy, said no one ever. But all of that, like if you try someone, I found someone, my friends, you big red machine. And what I loved is excitement about why he was bringing people to his office. Okay, there has to be that sense that you get that at a very high level, like out that a lot of behaviors, behavioral, and I'm experience with understanding behavioral style. And but one of the best things about even if you're not a big student of behavioral styles, and how do I show up? All right. In other words, you for your office, draw out some core values for your team, and not really change how you show up, how people see you, how people hear you. You know, it's the old saying of people won't, may not remember what you said, but they'll remember how they felt being around you. Be recruiting business. You talks about the value of the power value propositions. Before I talk about the value proposition, I want you to understand a lot more about the value thing. I have a large and is ever values. And I think it's vital that you stop doing in your business if you have not and what is the quality of the person you to attract. Now, once somebody has their core values, they call them, let's run a few: integrity, punctuality, reputation, communication, putting clients' needs first, all start love. All of these are core, and you would create core values that are personal to you and also sort of exemplify what you and your office stand for. Now, again, I cannot overstate this. One of the things that we do when we're encouraging offices to build and grow is to get the value propositions and put them in a frame so that they're in the conference room in a frame. They're in a little frame on everyone's desk, even on the bathroom wall, so that everybody that walks in and out of your office, especially your people, are reminded the kind of values that they've decided to work around. And then when you have guests come into the office for any reason, for a recruiting appointment or even just to drop off a file or to meet with someone else, they also get affected by these core values that you've established for your company or for your team. Can't say enough about it. Your core values, they're not changing. This is what our core values are. When I sign an agent up, I ask them to sign saying I agree to live by these core values that you've introduced to me as I've entered your area, your office, and that's vital. Like, we really want to recruit. In other words, one of the things that was very powerful for me is early on, I had a really good producer. This was, I want to say, 1994, 1995, so maybe 25 years ago. And he was an older guy and he was kind of like the godfather of real estate in the town I grew up in. And I was much younger. I could have been his son. And this is California. It's not New York, but I got the sense that every time he opened his mouth, he sounded like a New York mafia guy, right? And he didn't. It's just that was my impression, that like you wanted to bow down or kiss his ring. Doing things that were signing something for his seller, even told him, it's okay, sign it for me, I'm not in town. And this was way before the days of DocuSign or electronic signatures. Just a really big no-no. And then there was a couple other complaints, and so I called my boss, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, man. I love this guy, and I can't have him setting this example. And he said, Rick, you got to cut him loose. I don't know how to cut someone loose. It's not in my behavioral style. I'm the kind of guy that wants to avoid conflict or confrontation or displeasing of anybody. He had pulled up into the parking lot, and I could see him from my office. I ran out into the parking lot, and this is because I couldn't get him. But the reason I tell you this story is I jumped in the car with him, and he goes, his kind of,
I'm sorry, Rick. We're
he's gonna beat
losing
me up
you
right here in the car.
intermittently.
Okay.
It's very choppy. For most of it, it's been quite choppy.
Wow, I really apologize. I'm using the most expensive Wi-Fi that I at this hotel that I'm in. So let me just see. No worries. Let's see. It's certainly not something you're doing.
I know that we'll have access to a handful of the downloadable pieces of content from your website. They sent that link to me. And
yeah,
I am recording the session, so I'll be providing everybody this recording, but is there any other means of them getting maybe some form of audio of what you're discussing today? Is that on y'all's website or something perhaps?
Well, yeah, a lot of the stuff is going to be in the download section.
Okay.
And let's see. Now, I just changed it to another Wi-Fi source in the hotel. Let me just try something really quickly here.
And the webcam portion did get clearer.
Well, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to...
so that may be the answer to our tricks here. Thank you all for everyone online for being patient while we try to work it out. We just want to make sure it's as good as we can make it for you guys.
Okay, I'm turning off the webcam in hopes that the power that it takes to run the webcam will go towards making this a smoother...
Okay. Yeah.
How am I sounding
when
now?
It works. You sound pretty good right now. Yeah.
Okay. I've switched the Wi-Fi to a different Wi-Fi, and I've turned off the the video. You don't see me anymore, I imagine, right?
Right. We see the PowerPoint. Would you mind just touching on a handful of the highlights? I know you can't redo the whole entire thing, but I just want to be sure that they're hearing your great content.
No problem. So
thanks.
Maybe I can get my new friend Cindy to send me a little message telling me what she heard and what she didn't hear. So I'm gonna go backwards here. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a bunch. Sorry for the confusion.
Problem. It's quite all right. This is definitely my issue. I always knew this was where I was going to be doing the webinar from, but I assumed being a very large hotel chain that it would be, that the Wi-Fi would be stronger.
Right, valid.
But you haven't heard me vacillate at all since I turned off the video, right?
It seems much better now, yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So, yeah, I don't, for those of you who've heard a few things and maybe picked up some of that, the main story that I was telling recently just then about having to fire a really top producer who was relatively toxic in my office, actually, I'll shortcut all of the emotion that I went through having to do that. But bottom line, what happened was it actually created this awareness that we were going to stand by our core values and that we weren't going to allow people to come in and just because we wanted the money that they created for the office, which helped create profitability, that we had to more stand by our core values for the future of our office and for the well-being of the rest of them. And that one little firing that I did, it was the first time in my life, and I was just I was probably 37, 38 years old, and I'm 62 today. I can tell you that it dramatically changed the way I looked at understanding the mindset of recruiting and retention. Now, one of the things that I didn't bring up, I brought back to this slide called Learning the Recruiting Mindset for a reason. Because as I've said, and whether you miss those parts or not, I'll do a little repeating, is that the number one key, as you'll look on this slide, to recruiting is retention. But you have to start all of that with understanding what it is about you that likes recruiting, what is it about you that doesn't like recruiting, and how can we work around that. In other words, when I first got hired to start recruiting in 1993, I asked the guy who ran the company, I said, what did you pick me for? And he said, because you're a top listing agent in the area. And I said, well, how does that make me a good recruiter? He said, because you're not afraid to ask for the business. He said, we have found in our research that people who are top listing agents also make great recruiters. So obviously one of my roles as a coach for the past 20-something years in terms of coaching people about recruiting and retention has been understanding what their mindset is and how they look at that. Are they challenged by it? Are they excited by it? Or do they not want to do it? The other thing, if you compare it just to understanding, a lot of you are brokers and run real estate offices, and you probably are frustrated with how little your people in your office currently lead generate. Well, it's the same thing with recruiting. Lead generation is not something people are naturally going to do. There's all four behavioral styles are not naturally good lead generators because of their behavioral styles and what they avoid and what they don't like. It's the same thing with this. Now, we are all better at retention and can be even better than we are at retention currently because we feel like it's loving the people we already know to love. But one of the, again, another great lesson understanding retention is when's the best time to tell one of your agents that you love them? Now, I'm not expecting you to answer because I don't hear you today, but what I will tell you is this. The answer is just before another broker does. And that question came out of something when I was having some problems in my first marriage. I talked to a counselor and he said, Rick, when's the best time to tell your wife you love her? And I said, I don't know, every day. He goes, well, certainly just before someone else does. So that's the idea, is what are the things that you're doing so that the people that already work with you know that you love them and are reminded of that every day. So we have several retention systems that we advocate. And why am I talking about this? Because when you talk about recruiting and retention on steroids, you've got to know that there are some amazing things. So I'm going to, these aren't all going to be in the notes here, so I'm going to encourage you, since this is recorded, to listen to it again or at least take some notes about understanding some retention systems. Here's what we do. We have a form at Workman Success Systems called a Getting to Know You form. It's not magic, ladies and gentlemen. It's certainly something you could prepare yourself. What's your name? What's your address? What's your phone number? What's your email address? What's your birthday? This is for every agent that you decide to hire. Okay, what's your spouse's name? What's your spouse's birthday? What's your wedding anniversary? What is your children's name and their birthdays? What's your favorite sport? What's your favorite TV show? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite book? What's your favorite color? Like, these are the kinds of questions that go on a getting to know you form, not a mystery. All right? Now, let's say that you are one particular behavioral style, or even the thought of preparing a form like that makes you want to poke yourself in the eye with a needle. Well, I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there is somebody in your staff or somebody in your surroundings, somebody in your 3 feet that would most likely love to prepare that kind of form. But again, we'll have access to that form, and I will ask Workman Success. If it's not in the free downloads that I'm giving you, then I will make sure we send that out to HAR, and they'll make sure it's available to you. I always encourage people to look at our current Getting to Know You form and to make it their own. Now, I'll give you a little example of a retention tactic. Please listen to this carefully. One of the things that we used to have our staff do when I ran several real estate offices is every staff member in the office. Now, the office that I had my license in had about 175 agents. And we had our staff members each have to write 5 handwritten notes a week, each staff member, including the team leader who ran the company. All right? Now, while I was part owner and owned a big percentage of these offices, I was not in the position of overseeing the agents. Okay? My job was to oversee the people who ran the office. So I was not involved in the 5 handwritten notes. But we would send a handwritten note for any particular reason. Caught you doing something good, you just got a listing, you just put a buyer under contract, you know, happy birthday, like you name it, we did it. Now, when we did this, the most important thing that we could do with those notes, obviously, is, you know, remind people how much we care about them. We're happy to be in business with them. We're happy to have a friendship with them. But as you look at understanding the power of retention, you have to remind yourself that every little opportunity you have to remind people that you are a valued part of our business is vital. One of the other things that we used to do is we used to have spouse night or significant other night. And that was when we invited all the spouses and significant others to the office, but the agents weren't invited. It was the ability for me and my staff, the manager, the assistant manager, and the head admin, to meet and greet with the significant others of the agents. So we had a lot of men and women in there, and they had on their name tag their name and the name of the agent they were associated or affiliated with in our office. And we would do a state of the office, we would do a state of the market, and we would talk and joke about what it was that agents had to go through to be successful. And what this really helped with was securing the fact that if one of our agents went home and said, I'm thinking about leaving, their spouse was so engrossed in our culture that they would most often say, what? I love that place. I love those people. Why are you thinking that? Have you talked to anyone? You know, that kind of thing. And they became another support section for us. We would also make sure that the birthday cards for the agents and for the agents' significant others were all mailed to the home and not just dropped off in their box in the office. Now, these are all ideas that we did a lot of. We would also even go to open houses over the weekend. We would pop into open houses of our own agents and bring them a bottle of water that had our name, the name of the company, wrapped around the bottle, and an apple. Always a bottle of water and an apple. Now, we also did this as a recruiting thing. But the reason I'm mentioning a few of these examples is to say, when I say these, do you cringe? Or are you saying, wow, that's a great idea? Or are you saying, that's stupid? What is it that's running through your mind and your body right now when I tell you about the things that are going to be necessary for you to do this? Now, that's going to bring me to what this slide now where we're talking about the value proposition. And the reason the power of value proposition is up here is, remember that I said when you establish your core values, and hopefully you heard that part, when you establish your core values and you've got them in frames on people's desks and on the walls and in the conference rooms and the bathrooms, everybody knows what it is you stand for. But value propositions are an ever-growing list. So obviously, if you are the owner of an office or the broker or the manager or all three, you must be one of the value propositions. If you're not, that has to change such that you are. In other words, guess what? When you come to work here, you get me. Now, while that may sound arrogant, or it may sound, oh, I'm patting myself on the back, ladies and gentlemen, that is how it has to be. It has to be that whoever is the face of that office, the face of that franchise, the face of that independent mom and pop, has to be the kind of person that people are going to be attracted to. I have one franchisee that owns 3 offices, and I won't mention the franchise or the state so that everybody is kept, confidential. And, when she talks to her top people and says, what is it that keeps you here at our office, and what can we do more to show you that we appreciate you and we're happy? They always say, I'm here because of you. And that's so great. Now, do you want them to be there for more things? Yes, absolutely. And that's the beauty of value propositions. So I want you to think about a list of value propositions that are always growing, and yet that the ones that have been there stay there, that work. In other words, is it your training? Is it your location? Is it the office itself? Is it you? Is it your compensation program? Is it your mentoring program? What are the value propositions, and how long of a list of value propositions can you create? Because people are going to come for one reason to your office and usually are going to stay for another reason. It's very seldom that we hear people say, I came for this and I stayed for that. The number of people I interviewed in the days that I owned Keller Williams Realty offices, and I was a national speaker and trainer for Keller Williams Realty, so I was traveling all over the U.S. and Canada, talking to people all the time that were with and not with the company. And the number one thing I would hear from people was that there was always 2 things. I came for the split and I stayed for the culture. I came for the training and I stayed for the compensation program. Whatever it was, there was always bigger lists of value propositions that were different from why a person originally came. In other words, what was it that they got enamored about and quickly moved over, versus why they stayed for the long term. I cannot stress this enough, ladies and gentlemen, that this understanding value propositions and developing them in such a way that you've created something that a lot of people will be attracted to. Now, I'm going to tell you a private story, and obviously it's not going to be private anymore because it's going to be recorded and you're going to know it. But the private story is this. When I left Keller Williams Realty, I had several top companies call me and ask me first to come to work for them. Not interested, don't want to own offices, don't want to manage, I'm good. But then I started, when I was working with Workman, I started getting calls from major franchises saying, please come and talk to our brokers and explain to them how to recruit against this company or that company. Now, here's the one thing. I want you to think about this for a minute. Look at, when people ask me, they say, and I've actually had some pretty powerful people that are in the industry call me and say, hey, this company got one of my top producers. What are they saying to them? But I can remember that my boss in 1994 said to me, he said, if somebody left to go to another company, it's not about what that company was offering them. It was about what you failed to find out that was important to them. And that is very, very true. Now you may say, well, that's not true. I've seen people leave for this or for that. Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, but I can tell you in my happy days with the companies I've been with in the past, I didn't even know to look. I was too ecstatic. I loved my life. I loved the sales I was doing. I loved the people that were surrounding me. And companies were growing around me, and I hadn't even heard of these companies because I was so content where I was. Only in the moment of my discontent did I even take notice of who the other companies were. Now, you see the slide here. It's got some of the core values: always do the right thing, embrace family, enjoy the journey, deliver excellence. You see some of those there. And those value propositions and core values are vital, as we've talked about. And all of these things have to do with the understanding that you have to get yourself in a mindset just as I coach. For instance, something I said yesterday morning to a guy who owns a real estate franchise. Now, you got to remember, name a franchise, and I've coached somebody who owns an office for them. So there are very few franchises out there that I don't know their core values. I don't know what they stand for like I do. That's my job. If I'm going to help you grow your office, I have to understand what your value propositions are and what your core values are. But in the end, we have to also track our activities that matter. Now, look at this form I have on there. It's called a Recruiting Daily Success Habits Tracker. It's about, the left side of it is about tracking your day. What am I doing every half hour? Because if I'm talking to the guy that I spoke to yesterday morning who runs a very successful team and owns a relatively successful real estate office, notice I said relatively successful, because his wife wishes that he did not ever open a real estate office and that he continued just to sell real estate. Now, I want you to ask yourself right now, how many of you, if you didn't have a lease and salaries and obligations, kind of wish? Don't raise your hand because I'm not going to see it anyway, and please don't answer this out loud. This is between you and the mirror. How many of you think to yourself, gosh, I wish I never did this. I wish I stuck to sales. I'd be making so much money and less headaches. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are where we are. We are 100% responsible for the decisions we made that got us here, the decisions that worked and the decisions that didn't work. This one gentleman that I coached, his wife is furious that he owns a real estate franchise. Now, did she support him in getting it? Yes, but she didn't know that it would affect the income that much, that the money that he was making in sales would be funneled out to keep the office open. There's only one thing that cures that: recruiting productive real estate agents. That's the one thing, right? You say, well, I can lower my expenses. Well, you're going to lower your expenses, but to a point. That's one thing Gary Keller used to say years ago, back in 2001, 2002, 17 years ago. He used to say, the things that you can do to produce more income that are unlimited is recruiting productive agents. The things that you can do to help your profitability that is limited is reduce costs. Right? You're only going to get to a certain point where you can reduce costs, and then you just don't have any more costs to reduce because you're running as lean as you possibly can. But there's always more productive agents to recruit. But recruiting is like the same frustration with lead generation. When I talk to the gentleman that I was talking to you about yesterday, I always have to ask him, when did you get your 1 hour a day, minimum 5 days a week, to lead generate for listings? And when did you get your 1 hour a day, 5 days a week to recruit to your office? Now, I'm working with one company where we asked, we're working on how to hire a successful recruiter for the company, and then what are the compensation programs. There is a million ways to get recruiting done, a million. Everything works, ladies and gentlemen, nothing doesn't. Okay? It's the same as selling real estate. You've got to talk to people. And there are people that are going to come over. I used to love when I'd call somebody to say, hey, I'd love to connect with you. And they go, oh, you're just calling to recruit me. And I go, well, that's very flattering, but that's actually not true. Because I couldn't anymore recruit you before knowing what kind of person you are and whether or not you're a match for us, or if we are a match for you, then I would marry you after a first date. Now, I'd really love to get to know you. We're in the same marketplace. We're probably going to show or sell each other's listings. And really, professionally, I'd love to get to know you. I hear great things. Now, other thing, Rick, I'm happy. I'm super happy and I'm super loyal where I'm at. Hey, I would love to have 1 million agents that were super loyal and super happy. And I love that for you, and I love that for your broker. But I want to remind you, if anything ever changes, could I be your second choice for a first phone call? I'd appreciate that. So there's lots of ways to keep the conversation going. Let me give you an example. This little form here has all kinds of activities you can do. Look at them if you can see them. Calling an agent, you get a point. Emailing or texting an agent, you get a point. Handwritten notes, you get 2 points per note. Recruiting appointment made, 3 points. Recruiting appointment kept, 10 points. You have to start to develop a point system that works for you. Now, I'd like to go down to the middle one. Do you see the middle one that says MBWA? Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That is something out of a Ken Blanchard book called The 1 Minute Manager, and that's called Management by Walking Around. One of the first tricks that my former boss in 1993 taught me. And I still use that today with my own team. I don't own a real estate office. I run a team. And when we get together on Tuesdays, I do a lot of MBWA. That's because there's about, between the entire team and staff and everybody, there's about 12 of us. But it's basically stopping and chatting with the individuals. So for us, when I used to run my bigger offices, Tuesdays was our office meeting day. Well, because of office meeting day, the office parking lot was always fuller, the meeting was pretty full, and then after the meeting, people would go back to their desk and use Tuesday as a catch-up day, paperwork, phone calls. So I would wander around the office, touch people on the shoulder. Those are the kind of people that you could touch. Some of them you never touch, you know, and you have to know that too. But touch people on the shoulder, say, hey, Tom, how's it going, man? Anything I can do for you? What's exciting? What's working for you? That kind of thing. How's the family? It's just wandering around the office, letting people know that you love them and that you care about them. Notice the open house visited for, and notice it says for your agents, and open house visited for recruits. Now, the Apple Water thing that I talked about before, very big activity, works really well. You walk into an open house with somebody you're trying to recruit, they're super busy, you go, hey, Jerry, here's a water and an apple for later. Looks like you're busy. Congratulations on the listing. Hope to catch up with you soon. And you walk out, right? Don't want to interrupt them. Don't want to get between them. If there's nobody in the open house when I go in except the guy I want to recruit, hey, Jerry, brought you an apple and a water. I know it's hard to get out, and maybe you didn't come prepared to get a snack. Listen, also, I know that, you know, when you're holding an open house, you don't want to go to the bathroom for fear somebody will come in while you're going to the bathroom. Why don't you go ahead and run to the bathroom? I'll watch your open house for you for a minute or two. Like stuff like that paid so many dividends over the years. So it's important that you track your activities and you create activities that get you results. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not willing to make the calls, if you're not willing to get face-to-face, this isn't going to work. All right? Now, notice I want you to go back up to recruiting appointments and retention appointments. Retention appointments are your desire to be face-to-face with your top 25% of your office. That's you. You, the head honcho, the broker, manager, owner. Get face-to-face with your top people. Even if you feel like they are above you, this is a problem in recruiting. Is people say, well, he sells 150 houses a year. I never sold 150 houses a year. And my boss would tell me, you're running a whole office. That person's just running his business. You are his equal. You are not greater. You are not less than. Bring them in. Talk to them about their business. If you are not the person to answer the concerns they have, you can always find that person. Help them with resources, right? One of the things I love for a lot of the people that I coach that own real estate offices right now is they have the resource of Workman Success Systems. And I tell you, he goes, Rick, I think I might lose Tom. I go, what do you mean? Have you talked to him? What's the problem? What's he looking for? What's next for him, right? And I'll say, offer him a call with your coach. And sure enough, I'm much more able, because I'm not the parent in this case, to dig out of him what he's looking for. There's all kinds of little things that you can do that can help change the total outlook of your recruiting and retention for your offices and for your businesses. All right. Now, this whole little, I had problems with the internet, and that I apologize for profusely. I got on at about 40 minutes before it started to make sure that things were working. And Marilyn has been amazing. I'm sure all of you must know Marilyn Maxwell, but she's been patient beyond her job description, and she's been helpful beyond her job description. But one of the things I want to do is that if you go to I'd like you to write this down, workmansuccess.com and then /recruithar. That is a link for you to have these items for free that we've talked about. Now, I talked about behavioral styles only briefly, and I want to remind you that the behavioral style disc assessment, we're giving you a link so that you can take it for free. And I also want to offer myself up. There's only 10 of you on the webinar. And while it's recorded and maybe people listen to it another time, I'm going to subtract 1 or 2 because 2 of them might be me and Marilyn. So I'm going to say that there's 8 of you. And I want to say something because of the problems and everything. I want to give you my personal cell phone number. And if you are frustrated, if you have questions, or if you're excited, or if you want to pursue this a little further, there's no obligation. Just text me and say, Rick, when can we talk? My cell phone, I'm going to write it down. And Marilyn, I hope you'll feel free to any of the members of your board that are broker owner managers that may need my assistance. You can give them my cell phone. It's area code 510-760-9902. And I will type that right here for you. Rick Geha. And that is 510-760-9902. Marilyn, I don't know if they will see my response because it says it's only going to organizers and panelists. So please feel free to send that to them.
Okay,
now,
I'll do that now.
I think I have access to the chat now, so if anybody would like to ask a question or tell me to shut up and get off the stage, any of that is all okay. And Marilyn, if you see something pop up that I don't see, let me know because I don't.
Okay.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you were. Hope what I gave you was helpful. I can tell you I have a lot more. Generally, I can do 3 to 4 hours just on recruiting and retention. But I'd love for you to find out what your personal issues are, where you're performing at a high level and where you're not, and feel free to use my cell phone. Pick up the phone, text me. Texting is best for the next few days because I can read the text without having to leave the office, leave the meetings I'm in, and I'd love to help you out any way I can. So take care, Marilyn. Thank you so much for your help.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Rick, for everything. And Cindy says, I want to thank you, Rick. Loved your slides. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like
good feedback there for you. So.
All right, cool. Well, you guys take care and lots of success to all of you, and thank you for joining us.